What's happening, y'all? We are going to go ahead and get started in just a few minutes here. Hope y'all are doing well. We're just going to get a few things set up and we will get into today's topic. All right. In the meantime, again, how's everybody doing? I hope y'all had a good weekend. Hope y'all have been keeping yourselves productive and whatnot since we last met. But I wanted to just see how y'all are doing. Yeah, give me 1 second. We're going to go ahead and get started. I got a few updates too that I want to give y'all before we really go into the topic as well too. But I wanted to just tap in and see how all y'all are doing. Let's see. And for those of you all who do not know, today's topic, we're going to go in heavy about this whole black fatigue propaganda that we keep hearing about. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned because we have a few things that we're going to need to break down. And I'm going to try not to be on here too long, but you know how it goes. Sometimes we get in the conversation, sometimes it keeps going. It could be a while, it could not. Let's see here. So I'm placing my PayPal right there in the chat. If y'all would like to donate, I would love that, of course. If not, I'm just glad y'all are here to enjoy the show and to come through and to chop it up and whatnot. But it is there for any of you all who would like to do that, who would like to contribute in whatever the case may be. All right, y'all. So before we go into the topic, I just want to give y'all a quick update. I really love going live and whatnot, and I'm going to keep up doing this with y'all because, again, I really enjoy being here. But it's just been difficult, because there's been a lot of different updates that have been going on with the Cool Colas brand. What's up, baby? Glad you was able to make it. But yeah, there's been a lot of updates that have been going on with the Cool Colas brand. There's a couple things that I've been doing to get things popping. I've been I got my website up and whatnot. I want to try to create a little bit of a community, via my website. So a lot of you all, I'm working on this right now, but I'm going to have a button where you all can kind of tap in and get updates on the things that I'm doing, even beyond here as well too. I'm going to tell people on Instagram the same thing, but I know there's somewhat of a separate community here on YouTube. I'm going to have the Cool Colas website updated where you'll get, information and updates on what's kind of happening in my world, not even just from a content creation standpoint, but with other projects and things that I got going on. And that way you're in the know. And, we can also kind of talk about some of the other, things that I may throw and whatnot as well too. So one of the things that I wanted to also talk about, I didn't want to make a whole video about this because I didn't feel like it was really necessary. I just wanted to give y'all an update. So some of you all probably know this from some of the updates that I've been given, on my posts. And I talked about how I was going to the YouTube Creator Collective event. So I wanted to kind of talk about that briefly before we actually got into the topic for today, because one of the things I'm going to talk about is based off of a conversation I had while I was there. So for those of y'all who do not know, this is a private event that you basically have to be, invited to in order to go. And hope everyone is having a good weekend. I hope you're having a good weekend as well, bro. I'm glad you were able to make it to the chat. Yeah, we're going to go in about this black fatigue thing in a minute, but I was given a few updates. So we'll definitely get there. But going back, they had this YouTube Creator Collective event. They have it all over the nation. They'll have it in different cities and whatnot, but they happened to have one in my city. And so I ended up, going to this event, because again, it was a private event. And, there were a lot of other YouTubers there as well, too. They had a whole bunch of stuff going on there because they had these arcade games. They had a bunch of food, and the food was really good, too. You could get drinks. So there were people who were just coming through asking if you wanted a drink here or there, as you were sitting and you were chatting with folks. So they had that going on as well, too. They had like game tables where you could play like ping pong, or I think that's what it was, like ping pong and stuff like that. They also had like an area where you could like take pictures, and it had the the banner that said YouTube Creator Collective as well too, and they had like a big monitor that showed like the YouTube logo as well too, so you could go over there, take pictures, sit by like the couches that they had by that area as well too, and it was just a good time. It was about 3 hours long. I got a chance to connect with a lot of other YouTubers as well too, and kind of see what they're doing and learn from some people who are really doing some great things. Mostly because, I want to be able to grow the brand, grow my channel, grow different, things that I'm putting out there. Because again, I think I told y'all this before. I'm not just putting out information here on YouTube. I also have a following that I'm building on Instagram. Matter of fact, the following Instagram is even bigger. And I have a following that I'm also attempting at this point to build on TikTok as well too. I'm on Twitch. And like I said, I'm trying to make my presence a little bit more known, kind of outside of what I do on social media. So I've really been putting in the work to try to get things out there, and things have really been going well with that. But I wanted to tell y'all about that event because it definitely was cool. If y'all ever get a chance to go, I definitely would go. It's a great opportunity, like I said, to network with people, but also just be involved with like creator community, and understand how you can kind of build your brand and build the stuff that you're doing up. And this is important, especially for a lot of us, because the stuff that we put out there, there's this active desire for the dominant society to try to shadow ban us, to try to make it seem like what we're saying is something that cannot be heard. So they're doing things actively to make sure that our voices are silenced. And my belief, and I've told people this on Instagram a while ago, is that you can really make a brand out of anything. And if you put your kind of effort into trying to create something, you could be creative about the way that you make your brand, and you convey the messages that a lot of people in our community are trying to create. It's very important that we do this, because there's a way for us to make it professional, like say the stuff that we need to say and make it professional. So that's what I've definitely been working on on my end, and getting that out there, getting that pro-Black grassroots influence out there, and the stuff that we have been saying and putting out there to the forefront. So yeah, it was a great event. I'm glad that I was able to go and I was able to attend, and I'm looking forward to the next one, because again, there's a lot of value that came from being at this event. Now that we got that out the way, I wanted to now get into today's topic, which, as you all probably know, if you haven't heard me say it about 2 or 3 times here, or you haven't seen it in the title of this video, today I'm going to be talking about this idea of Black fatigue, and it being used as negative propaganda against Black people. Now, for those of you all who do not know, Black fatigue was not defined as the way that they're trying to use it right now. And when I say they, I'm talking about these speculated white supremacists who are now trying to use this term and repurpose what it means. So this term, for those of y'all who do not know, was originally made by Mary Frances Winters, and she is a foundational Black American woman. She created this book in 2020, I believe, that was called Black Fatigue. And she is a diversity and equity consultant. And she coined the term to describe the feeling of being drained and worn down from the experience of racism. And she speaks about this even from the perspective of when we talk about microaggressions, where racism is happening in a less blatant way. So she was creating a book to detail those types of experiences. So Black fatigue's original definition was the exhaustion and weariness stemming from the cumulative impact of racism in Black individuals. This includes the constant exposure to racial microaggressions, systemic inequalities, and the ongoing struggle against racial injustice. So that was originally her idea, and the things that she came, or her not idea, but her theory that she came and created within her book. And that was what the term Black fatigue was supposed to mean. So the idea was for it to detail the Black experience, especially with us as foundational Black Americans, and how a lot of us experience racism at the hands of the white supremacists, and how we are tired and exhausted from having to deal with the ways that they have mistreated us in racial injustice. Similar to racial battle fatigue. Exactly. It's similar to that. I mean, think about it. It's all kind of a battle to a certain extent. There's just certain ways that it kind of takes place. So it's definitely like racial battle fatigue. It's this idea that, you know, all these different things happen to us when it comes to racism, when it comes to white supremacy, all the microaggressions, like she said, all the systemic inequalities, those types of things. We're tired of having to experience them, and we're also tired of having to fight back against them. So it's absolutely encompassing all of these different things. So this is the book that she created, and that was the term she also created as well too. What you all have to understand is that the dominant society has this active agenda to remix different terms that are created. We've seen this in so many different instances. And most of the times when these terms are remixed, they're either meant to deflect from something else that is a problem that they're not trying to put to the forefront, or the second thing they're trying to do is make it less powerful for us. So you'll see them use these different terms that we originally were using that were important for us in our community. And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that. Look at terms such as woke. The term woke was initially meant to detail this idea of someone who is Black being conscious of not only themselves and their history, but also what was happening around them. And as a result, the moves that they made and their mentality was shaped by their understanding of how all of these things play out and how all of these things connect with one another. So a lot of Black people who were considered woke were individuals who were on code. We were individuals who, because we had an understanding of history, what was happening in the present, and then again, like the racism that was happening around us, we could move with authority and we could move with empowerment. But when this term got co-opted, it got turned into a different definition than what it was originally meant for. So let me explain what I mean by that as well too. Woke has, in my opinion, two more definitions that were created. Now, people are going to try to confuse you because a lot of people are kind of squirrely and scary and all this other shit because they do not like to talk about this idea of there being an all-powerful white supremacist that is on both sides of the political spectrum. So you see a lot of times where people are trying to just talk about right-wing white supremacists or left-wing white supremacists when these are really just two wings on the same bird. What up, Torian? How you doing, bro? I'm glad you was able to make it to the live. Shout out to Torian Rain. He does a lot of great content for any of you all who are listening in. And he talks a lot about Black empowerment, but also like nerd culture as well, too. So I can definitely appreciate this brother, his messages and the things that he says. So like I said, shout out to him. Glad he was able to make it through. Anyway, going back. So when it comes to the term woke, you have two different definitions that have been added to that original definition. And because they've been added, they're using these two definitions to drown out the original definition that was used. So a lot of these right-wing white supremacists will use the term woke to mean Black. It's another dog whistle just to make it seem like they're really not trying to say Black, although they are. And the reason why they do this is because what a lot of white supremacists had to get used to was this idea that they couldn't just go out and just be blatantly racist. And this actually plays into that whole Black fatigue thing. And we'll get into that in a minute. But it's important for us to understand that a lot of them, you know, they are kind of upset, resentful of the fact that, you know, they can't use racist epithets and terminologies to describe us. So they'll use dog whistles undercover so that they are not labeled with the title of racist or white supremacist. And let me tell y'all something. When it comes to the whole title of white supremacists, or in this case, or suspected white supremacists, as we say, or I say speculated quite a bit, as far as those terms go, they do not like these labels because they know that if these labels are placed on them, they are going to be marked as somebody who is racist. And that means that they lose a lot of the benefits and the things that they actually have, because we're living in a world where there's a lot of people who are justice oriented. If you're marked with that label, then automatically you're going to get outcasted and you're going to lose a lot of the support you may have had before people knew that you were a flaming racist. So a lot of them are trying to use dog whistles so that if we call them out and say that they are being racist, that they're like, oh, well, I didn't say anything about black people, dude. I said woke. I said DEI. I said they do that type of shit because they're damn cowards. And they don't want to be outed as a racist again, because they know that that means that they're going to lose a lot of different things that all end up in financial access. They do not want any cords cut for them that are going to stunt their success. And they want to still also be true to their beliefs and their ideology. So that's why a lot of them will use code words instead of actually saying black. So one of the code words that they use is woke. Another word that they'll use, and I said this before, is DEI. It is kind of ironic that they will use words like DEI because we are actually the least likely to benefit from DEI benefits, despite the fact that you have these speculated white supremacists who will use this term to describe us exclusively. Black fatigue is the new woke. They have so much so-called fatigue, but aren't tired of their thievery. I kid you not. I saw a video of an old PC man claiming he was a YN. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, the reality is they're trying to do this regular routine, and this is what I'm describing, of coming up with these terms that they can remix into things that describe or deflect from their racism or allow them to actually carry out their racism. So a lot of what you've been seeing is them using like codified language, and it's a way to, one, spite us, because a lot of these terms are supposed to be positives, at least, or the illusion is that they're supposed to be positives that benefit us, but they use it in a negative way to actually talk badly about us. And you've seen a lot of these dog whistles in history. Think about it, because you've seen woke. DEI is another one. Another one that you've seen is Chicago. That's another one that they'll use sometimes too. Chicago is supposed to be another terminology to describe black people, or what's going on in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Like, people like to say stuff like that. And they do that because it's, again, a way for them to, not have to say black exclusively and then be outed as a racist for doing that. So a lot of these suspected, speculated white supremacists will go out and say things like DEI woke, and in this case, black fatigue, because they want to talk about either something related to a black person or a black person specifically. So going back, because I don't want to get away from what I'm saying, you have, on the right side, you have these speculated white supremacists who will say the term woke to mean black exclusively. And then on the left side, you have these suspected white supremacists who will use it to basically mean anything that is not an Anglo heterosexual white man. And this is also important as well, too, to understand, because ultimately, when it comes to the this term, it's another way of implementing benign neglect. It's a way of basically taking something that was exclusively for and about black people and adding other parties of people into it in order to mitigate the impact of this term being used exclusively for black people. All right, so we got Tori. He said something too. All the inner city locations: Chicago, Baltimore, Atlanta, certain parts of New York, Detroit too. Exactly. Yeah, man, you're definitely spot on with that. They use these different cities because they try to say, oh, these are places where a lot of black people are at, and there's a lot of crime there, and look who causes that, that crime. And then that's when we get into these black on black crime narratives, which end up trying to use as another deflection from us kind of calling them out about their racism. And we're going to get into that in a minute as well too. So I'm glad that you actually brought that up, bro. And then Inspire Truth Broadcast said they wore out woke. Now they need something else. Absolutely. And that's the thing. I almost want to call it the overused or remixed buzzword agenda. They try to create these different terms that are going to be used as buzzwords that often, like you said, Inspire Truth broadcasts get worn out. They use it over and over and over again. They use it for years. And so when you actually try to use their original, when it first came out, when you try to use this original meaning, people aren't hearing it because they're trying to drown out the impact of what it originally meant. And then when they've used it so much and they see that people are trying to avoid it because of the negative connotation that has come with that term, they'll go and they'll try to jump to something else. But they won't dare talk about the debauchery in these rural towns. Exactly. And it's funny, they'll even lie about it too, bro. That's why a lot of them will even say stuff like, well, what about all of you all who are on welfare and get all of these type of benefits? And it's like the welfare capital of the world, in United States, at least, we're talking about the United States, is literally in a small ass town in Kentucky that is predominantly white. And when I say predominantly white, what is it, like 99% white? Like there's almost like no black people in this town. Like you could probably go in parts and they probably never even like seen black people for real or live near them or talk to them. So I'm saying all that to basically say it's interesting that they say that. And then even when you try to make that argument, they'll say, well, what about the ratios, dude? And they'll try to say other shit like that. And it's like, come on now. Come on now. You're upset because of the fact that you were called out because you started lying about how this was something that black people, we're getting access to more than any other group. Let's see here. Evening, brother. Thank you for simplifying the aspect of them coming up with these BS terms. I'm tired of people playing these pretend games for real. Yeah, no problem. The thing is that a lot of times, like you'll hear these types of terms and nobody's breaking them down because they've already got to that stage where it's being used as a trendy buzz term. And that's the whole agenda, is for them to bring these things up because they know that if they continue to make noise, about something that is false, it will drain out the truth. And there's actually a debate fallacy for that. And I'm actually going to tell y'all real quick. I believe it's called it's Derby something. I talked about this before in a previous video. Hold on one second. I'm going to look it up because I actually want to tell y'all, because I talked about this in a previous video, but I can't remember the actual name. Let's see. The fallacy for saying something false so long the truth gets drowned out. So let's see here. I'm looking it up right now, y'all. So bear with me. I think some people are saying that it's the hold on. It'll come to me because there was definitely a fallacy, and I'm really big into telling y'all about like different fallacies that are in play when you see these types of things that are playing out essentially. Give me 1 second. It begins with a D. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can look at it on my phone, because I believe I have it written down here. Let me see. Begins with a D. I'm trying to think because I'm having a brain fart, y'all. I can't think of it. If you all know what it is, definitely shout it out. If not, I will find it eventually. But come on, let me see. Let me look up fallacy. It's a type of fallacy. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it right now. You know what? I'll come back to it. I'll eventually find it, but I wanted to kind of get back to what I was saying. But yeah, there's a fallacy that they try to do where they try to say what the if you say the lie for long enough, it drowns out the truth. Like, or at least like disproving the truth is an uphill battle. Like there's definitely a term for it, and it's something that is done regularly. And these types of terms are things that they try to do that with. But matter of fact, let me try one more thing actually, because it's gonna bother me. I don't know if y'all are like me, where like if you are like there's something that you want to say, or something that you know of, but you can't think of it, at the time, and it's going to bug you until you come up with it. Like I'm kind of there. So hold on one second. What is this called? I know I said it before. I know I said it before. Hold on one second. The truth is an uphill battle. Let's see. Let me see. Is known as, it's a type of informant that dismisses criticism by suggesting the critic is motivated by undisclosed or favoritism towards an opposing rep. Okay, that's not it. That is not it. It's gonna bother me until I figure it out, y'all. I can't figure out what it is. I remember you talked about it before. I did talk about it. I talked about it. There was a video that I actually made where I talked about it and I discussed it. But right now, I can't think of what the word is, but it literally describes what I'm talking about. But it's something that I've actually used before to describe that type of scenario. Let me see here. I'm going to look up one more thing, and if not, I'll just move forward. And then once it does come to mind, then I'll kind of share with y'all kind of what that term is. Let's see here. I don't think it's not Brandolini's law. I don't think it's Brandolini, because that was another one, Brandolini's law, where they tried to hold on. Maybe it's not Brandolini's. Anyway, I'll get back to it. Argumentum de nauseam. I don't know if that was it. Hold on. Let me check that out. Argumentum de nauseam. Let's see. Argumentum ad nauseum is a logical fallacy that involves repeatedly stating a point or claim without providing any supporting evidence or engaging in further discussion. That's a part of it, but that's not exactly what I'm trying to body. Like that's a good eye on that. Good eye on that for sure. But I'm trying to think that it's even more so to that. It's the idea of not just like repeating the same thing over and over again without proof, but saying the same thing over and over again with maybe even a knowledge of what the reality is, so much that the person who originally stated the truth has an uphill battle of trying to prove what that truth is. Like I said, I'll figure it out at some point, but what you said is a part of its Inspired Truth broadcast. So again, good eye on that, but it's further than what you are saying even. But yeah, going back to what the point that I was trying to make. So what a lot of these white supremacists, they try to do is they try to remix terms and say them enough and make them buzzwords, enough so that people aren't trying to research where these terms originated from. They're not really trying to figure out what the origins of them were and restoring those origins as well too. They're not trying to do any of that type of stuff. The only thing that they're really trying to do is say the thing that's popular over and over and over again, and using that as a way of creating legitimacy in remixing something. So this is a common tactic with the dominant society. A lot of them love to do this thing where they are literally remixing things that are related to us. They love to take things that we say, the things that we do and whatnot, and they try to create a new definition to it or a new meaning to it. So you see this all the time. So this is not something that this is not something that they're originating. These terms that they're creating themselves, they're taking things that have already been created and then turning them into something else. And you can tell this is something that's going on, and this is not something that it happened back in the day and doesn't happen now. You can tell this is an ongoing thing because again, this sister literally created this book in 2020. That was only 5 years ago, y'all. And they are now taking something from damn 2020 and remixing it in the way that is going to serve them and their agendas. So A lot of these speculated white supremacists try to say that fatigue, or at least this remix term that they're creating, is a result of them being exhausted from us talking about them being racist, and also them being tired of us also being degenerate as well too. And they're remixing that into its own ball, and they're saying that all of this is a part of this black fatigue. And they use these types of terms to, or and I guess ideas, to make a direct correlation that they are tired of our nonsense. And they're taking all these things that we're saying, and they're kind of crafting it into a ball of this is black people's nonsense, a mix of them being degenerates while also complaining about this idea that you are talking about racism. I'm not an expert, but it sounds like this burden of proof fallacy. I don't know if it was that, but hold on, let's take a look at it since you brought it up, because again, it could be a better definition than what I'm thinking right now. Burden of proof fallacy. Let's see here. The burden of proof fallacy is a logical error where someone incorrectly shifts the responsibility for providing evidence to support a claim from the claimant to the opponent. This is not what I was describing, but this is a piece of it. So y'all are doing a good job of bringing up these fallacies that actually involve what I'm talking about. It's not directly what I'm saying, but it does involve it enough where it's another piece of the pie, right? So I will say that this is actually important, but it's not necessarily what I'm trying to describe. Like I said, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. I just can't think of it right now. But going back to what I'm saying, so they are trying to take all of these different things, and they're trying to remix it and put it into a ball that basically says, these are the things that we're tired of. We're tired of your shit. And then the quote unquote your shit would be us bringing up the fact that they're racist, and then us having some type of degeneracy that they have noticed. And a lot of these Sambos, they love to also co-sign these suspected white supremacists who say this type of stuff. So you'll have them making videos saying, well, yeah, I'm tired of their shit too. And it's like, at the end of the day, a lot of them already want to divest from the community. So they are already on that train. So they're them doing that is a way for the dominant society to basically justify what they're saying as well too. And so they point to these butter biscuit eating Negroes, and they'll say, well, look at this guy. Look at Tyrone over here. He agrees that black fatigue is a bad thing, they'll kind of go into that type of stuff, because they believe that if they believe they point to a black person who's saying the same thing, then it actually justifies the idea that they're talking about that what they're talking about is actually legitimate. So they try to use them as the example, and better yet, the paradigm for something that is related to not a racial claim, but just a general thing that white people experience. So that's what they're trying to do ultimately. So yeah, you'll have a lot of these Sambos who also co-sign it as well too. So I want to make it clear, it's not just these suspected white supremacists who are saying these things. It's also a lot of these Sambos who are also echoing the same stuff. So you'll definitely hear that. And the reality is that they really don't like when we bring up things such as reparations, racism, racial mistreatment, speaking truth to power, speaking up about, injustices, things that happen to us, and definitely talking about systemic racism. These are things that they hate to hear. So they're using black fatigue to basically say they're so tired, they're so exhausted, they're so all this other stuff about us speaking up about ourselves. They're trying to ultimately use this as a deflection tactic so they can mitigate the impact of hate speech. That's literally what this comes down to. And again, I want to make it clear, this is a deflection tactic, and it's a way to deflect from their racism. And also, it's a way for them to do what they have always done, which is for them to not accept accountability for the shit that they have done and that they continue to do. A lot of them, and understand this, are trying to find ways that they cannot take accountability for the fact that they have been racist. So they try to create these different terms to make the attention shift to our statements and, as they say, complaints than it is to them making racist statements or the idea that they are being racially discriminatory. And so one of the things that's important here to understand, and Black people really we have to really get this shit into our system. You know, those of us who are going around saying, Weezy is our own worst enemy. You know, you got that crowd, the We's got to do better. You see them types of people that are walking around and shit amongst us. We've got to drown that stuff out, and we've got to not actually, you know, join in when people say this type of nonsense. And the reason why is because a lot of us need to understand that there are other things at play that are outside of you know, the like self accountability, because what you're doing is you're mitigating the impact of us speaking up about racism and the things that are happening, and you're allowing them to not actually take accountability for, you know, the things that they actually are doing. So a lot of us will get into this self blame train, you know, because of the fact that we're trying to say, well, it's just as much like us being our own, you know, worst enemies as it is, you know, racism. And these things are absolutely not equated. We have to get into our heads what Neely Fuller Jr. said. Rest in peace to him, of course. What Neely Fuller Jr. said, which is that when it comes to talking about white supremacy or the presence of such, we are not supposed to call it complaints. We are not supposed to call them gripes. We are not supposed to call them any terms that create a negative connotation around us bringing these things up. These are called reports, not complaints, reports. And the reason why they're called reports is because we are reporting on the climate of the world that we are experiencing. That's why it's different. So we're almost like weather people, like the weather people that you see on the news. People who tell you like it's about to thunderstorm on Wednesday. The people who tell you it's about to snow on Thursday. We're basically those types of people because we exist in the system of white supremacy, which means that we are reporters and experts on knowing how our community is being impacted by that type of thing. So we're really like reporters. That's like basically, you know, whining at a weatherman because they said that, you know, it was going to snow on Saturday. Like, you know, because that's how a lot of times we get into this whole, and I talked about this before, solution samples type of like category. A lot of times these solution samples will be like, well, we know it's bad, but what is your solutions? You know, they get into that type of nonsense. And that's because they are missing the idea that we're reporters, not just people making a complaint. We're talking about what's going on. We're bringing awareness to our community about what is happening. That is part of the solution. We're reporting on things that are, you know, are things that we're not basically causing. And also, too, we're showing what is happening so we know how to move going forward. So that's a lot of kind of what's happening with that. They're trying to take accountability away from themselves and putting it back on us. So they're basically reducing it to us either complaining or us being not worthy of some form of empathy because of the fact that they're pointing out the negative or degenerate folks who are amongst our community. And when I think about it, I'm like, ain't that about a bitch? I say that because I'm like, look at y'all's community. A lot of you all have some of the worst crimes. I mean, there's stuff that our community does. There's stuff that every single community does that is negative, that is degenerate. Every single community. But the stuff that the dominant society does, like a lot of these degenerate white folks that they do, is out of this world. I mean, like a lot of them are committing crimes that that for the most part, we wouldn't dream of wanting to do. I mean, we don't do things like kidnapping children and, you know, we don't do things like incest and all this other stuff. We don't do stuff like that. So it's just, you know, kind of funny how they're trying to put the spotlight on us being degenerate and doing all these like degenerate crimes and whatnot, but they're not doing any type of examination of their own community while they're trying to create these types of deflections. So, and one thing that we need to really understand with all this is, that was weird. With all this is that, you know, it's actually quite the opposite of of what I said about them saying that they're fatigued by us. They're not fatigued by us by any stretch of the imagination. They are actually obsessed with us. And that's one thing you have to understand. There's not really a black fatigue per se. Like from their end, they're not fatigued by us. They're actually obsessed with our culture in so many different ways. They're you have to understand that a lot of these suspected white supremacists in the dominant society, they love to be in our mix. They love to know what we are doing. They love to be able to do what I call the keeping tabs agenda. So for those of you all who not know what that is, the keeping tabs agenda is this agenda that I've talked about this on Instagram, as a matter of fact, but they have this desire to always be in our business, know what we're doing, know what's happening with us. And sometimes it's very blatant and sometimes it's very subtle. These kind of subtle examples will be and there's like a whole video. It's a video that this I want to say it was this sister who did it, and you hear her saying when you're black, you're never really lonely because there'll always be a white person all up in your business. Like you'll hear that. I don't know if y'all ever seen that, and they'll show a compilation of videos of white people being like basically all up in the Kool-Aid. So that's why I said like they do it subtly sometimes, because you'll see white people who will be observing black people who may be dancing, or they may be at a party, or they may be like enjoying themselves, and then there they are like kind of staring or looking, and it could be an old white person, it could be a really young one, or like it'll be a black woman and she'll be at like some type of dinner or whatever. Like she may be at like some restaurant, she's taking pictures, with her friends, and then like this white person comes up and they're trying to photobomb. Like those are like subtle examples of it. Like they seem harmless, but they actually play into an actual mentality. Like now there's a bigger side of it, which would be like I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say that a black person has a lemonade stand, and like even a young one, like it could be a kid, it could be somebody who's like a teenager or younger, and they're selling lemonade on the corner, and then you get this Karen who is sitting around trying to call the police on this little like black person who was like just trying to sell some lemonade. So you'll see that this agenda play out quite often. That's their way of not just keeping tabs on us, but also trying to regulate the way that it looks. The keeping tabs agenda is for them to kind of know where we are, what we're doing, and how everything is working with us, like what is happening our way. But then they take it a step further, because they have this kind of population tailoring agenda, and they have different methods that they use to try to mitigate it. Because some of the things that we've seen, or at least that I've seen, is this whole idea of population control. A lot of people don't like to talk about that because they're like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. But you got to understand that a lot of the conspiracy theories that we actually see, today are just like black people who are just uncovering the truth of the discrimination and racism and things that they actually are facing. But it gets under the title of conspiracy theory because it's something that is kind of difficult to prove, but it's a pattern that has been practiced for a long time. Now, when it comes to this whole idea of population control and ultimately tailoring, understand that the population of black people has fluctuated between 12 to 18% since the 1700s. And if you look at the census, it basically shows that. Now, here's where that conversation that I had about the YouTube creator event comes in. Because I had a conversation with a dude while I was there, and he basically was asking me, because he was asking me about my genre and kind of what I do and what I talk about. So I talked about, I talk about black empowerment, especially like in blurred media, but in general as well too. I talk about it all. And so we got into a conversation about reparations and all this other stuff. And this dude is FBA, by the way, because I know some of y'all probably are wondering that. But he was saying, well, he said, do white people really care about the census like that? And I'm like, hell yeah, they do. Like, are you for real? Because like they literally use that as a way for them to keep tabs on who is what. They really take that shit very seriously. Matter of fact, you could take it back to its origins. Think about the origin of race itself. They're the ones who created race as a social construct. So of course they take this very seriously, because they're the ones who, wanted to know who was black, who was white, and separating us, and then doing all these other systemic injustices to make it, to give it where they had a system that was going to empower them while also oppressing us. So yeah, it's obvious that they keep these types of things, that this is very important to them, because you see what they've done with the race construct in general. I see a couple people have some comments here I need to talk about. Let's see. That is crazy. How does a person get mad about us speaking the truth about what is actually happening to us? So this is the reason why they do that, baby. They are trying to deflect from accountability. They believe that if they deflect from that and they do it enough, that it takes the attention off of us saying that. So now, because we've gotten to this society where everybody is talking about being a victim and victimhood and all this other stuff, that's another buzzword that's being used as well too. A lot of people are now focused on the idea that they keep saying victimhood this, victimhood that. It's bad to be a victim. You're a victim. You're a victim, because they're using that terminology over and over again. The attention and also the venom gets thrown towards whoever is being titled as the victim more than they are the people who are actually doing the victimizing. Victimizer ultimately is not really seen as a negative thing, because they're creating a culture where it is okay for them to deflect and to talk about the other side. That's why also, even if you think about communication, just basic communication, people are more than likely, if you see two people having a conversation and one person says something about another person and that other person defends themselves, they're more likely to demonize the person and call them defensive than they are to talk about the person who made the initial offense and call them offensive. So even in conversation, we have a tendency to, or they've created a society now where it's more likely that they are going to support somebody who is a victimizer while demonizing somebody who is an actual victim. That's why victim is now being used as like a pejorative for people, because it's a way to, again, make it where our voices are not really being heard. So going back, they are quite obsessed with us. That's the bottom line. They're quite obsessed with us. And they love to be in our mix in a lot of different ways that you have to understand. They love Black music. They love our lingo. They love the inventions and the things that we've created. They enjoy a society that our ancestors actually built. But I'll take it a step even further. Not only do they love these positive aspects, the things that we've actually created that they can enjoy, they even more so love Black trauma. There's a Black trauma sauce or Black trauma porn obsession with the dominant society. And let me explain what I mean by that. When it comes to this whole trauma porn, trauma sauce thing, a lot of the dominant society loves this type of get up because their whole ordeal is they love to just watch us be self-deprecating, doing bad things to each other and things like that over and over again. They love to kind of nitpick and to try to take instances where we do ratchet or degenerate things and then say, well, look at your community, dude. Look, you hurt your own people, dude. They kind of get into that type of shit. And the reason why they get into that is because they love to make it seem like, well, you all don't deserve reparations. You all don't deserve social justice because you all hurt yourselves. So they're trying to make the argument to a certain extent. Well, humans just hurt humans. Humans just do bad things. So why should the spotlight be on me? Because look what you do to yourself. So now they're trying to find a way to block out, centuries of oppression, of racism, slavery, and all these other effects that have actually negatively impacted Black people. So they're not trying to look at cause and effect or where things started. They're just trying to look at, oh, well, we can equate all these things because look at how people just behave in general. So they're trying to make all this shit kind of relative so that there's no real claim that we would have to calling them out on their bullshit. So that's really what they're trying to do at the end of the day. And they have an obsession with that. They literally will go and they will find these things. How can you be fatigued and obsessed at the same time? That's the question there. You can't. You can't be fatigued and obsessed. It's just not a thing. And the reason why I say that this is important for us to understand is because when it comes to this whole Black fatigue issue, if you're fatigued by something, you really want it to end because it's exhausting you. But it actually gives them a real thrill. They love to see this thing. I mean, just think about when white people hear about Black people doing things that are ratchet or degenerate or, them acting a fool or being silly. They're sitting there with this sinister, evil ass giggle like it's the funniest shit in the world. And a lot of times that shit it's not even funny. They love to laugh and giggle and chuckle at Black people doing things that are degenerate, and they literally will actively find these things and use mechanisms like social media to propagate these things over and over again. and also train us to believe that we are as bad as they're trying to portray us as. Meanwhile, we don't put any spotlight on any of their behaviors or actions, and then they'll get a lot of these, tools of their society to also co-sign that as well too. But if you look even in their cultures, they also do things that are degenerate or just downright ratchet, to be quite honest with you. I think I've seen a few people talk about this before on social media, but you can go online right now. You could look at when people go to some of these different countries, like even outside of like just like, not European countries or whatever. You go to some of these countries and you'll see them do a lot of degenerate stuff, even when it comes to like their food and the way that they're serving people. Like think about when they have like things like just giving an example, like the Indian street food, and you'll see it'll look like real nasty, and the hygiene will be questionable. Like a lot of them, they'll be touching the floor, touching these dirty ass pots, and then they'll be using their hands to prepare the food, and then like it'll be unsanitary. They'll have their feet all out, feet be looking all crusty, like it'll be all types of weird stuff going on, and then they'll serve you the food after that. Like they don't even have like a hygienic type of thing going on in their society. Or you'll see, or even worse, those are like smaller examples, or even worse, look at examples like there was a video, and I think this was in India that this was happening. You see like these it was like women and men, and they were having these interactions where the men were domestically abusing the women. Like there was one, and I kid you not, it was a video, it was a compilation. It was one video where it was an Indian dude, and he had a woman who was tied to a tree, and then he was like whooping her with what I thought was like a branch, and he was just beating the hell out of her. And I'm looking like that, and I'm like, ain't no way a foundational Black American woman would ever let some shit like that fly. I mean, they would turn around and beat our asses. Not saying that we want to do it, not saying that at all, because we wouldn't. We would definitely not want to do that. But what I'm saying is that if you look at like a lot of the people who are in these cultures, they're allowing these types of things to actually happen, and they just go unnoticed or talked about. Or you'll see some videos where there was another video too on that one where it was a dude and he was like winding up like I don't know if any of y'all like watch WWE, but there's a wrestler named Sheamus, right? And Sheamus has a special move called like the bro kick. Now he wasn't dramatic, like he was doing it like he was like beating his chest, like you're saying, bro. He wasn't doing all that. But I swear, if I remember correctly with this video, it was a dude, and he was like winding up to like kick the shit out of this woman. Like I was looking at this and I was like, wow, like this is not something that we would even do regularly in our culture. And here are videos of these people doing these types of things. My point here is to say that all these cultures love to talk about how degenerate and all this and all that we are. Every culture has degeneracy. Every culture has it. And a lot of the crimes of these other cultures are far worse than the crimes of our own culture. Crime is not good no way, one way or another. But my point here is that the spotlight often gets put on us when ultimately they are committing worse crimes and more crimes in a lot of these other communities. So it's interesting that they're basically telling us that we don't have the right or the claim to, talk about racism or reparations or things like that, when ultimately we are committing the least amount of crimes compared to, their society. And then if you look at a lot of these other buffer groups. Now, with that being said, the thing that we also need to understand is that, regardless, we don't need to be wrapped up in how much they're deflecting. I'm just making the point to share with you what they're trying to do when they use the term Black fatigue. We need to put the focus on the fact that they are what they're deflecting from. They're deflecting from their racism. They're deflecting from the fact that they do not want to atone for what they have done. They're deflecting from things that are actually legitimate. So that's really what it kind of boils down to. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about too is why I believe a lot of this stuff is actually going on. A lot of this stuff is going on because ultimately it started out this is my opinion, but I believe that this all started not just with the fact that they didn't want to keep overusing terms and things like that, but I think that They started doing this because of the backlash from one, what was happening with Carmelo Anthony, and also the uproar of Black people speaking up about Shiloh Hendricks basically getting all this money from literally being a total white supremacist. So they are trying to, again, legitimize this idea of us calling out hate speech and racism. And the way that they legitimize it is by them saying, well, I have Black fatigue. I'm fatigued by this idea that Black people are so degenerate and they are always whining about racism and all this other stuff. And as a result, I'm fatigued by their behavior. That's basically what they're trying to say. And they're trying to say it enough where people are able to use that as a deflection to legitimize that. They want to be able to have it, make it a thing where white people are able to start getting back to where they were before. As I told y'all, they are at a stage where they are trying to be covert about the way that they make racist epithets and say certain things. And they're trying to get back to a place where they can just be real. And so what they're trying to do is get instances where people are doing racist things, and then they're either rewarded for them or they're not punished for them, or it doesn't hurt them. So they use Black fatigue as a way to help with that type of thing, because these types of these racists who do that can go back and they can say these different things. They can say, oh, like Black people are saying I'm racist, I have Black fatigue. And it happens quite a bit. And I think they're using certain examples to do that. Like, so think about, for example, I'm gonna give y'all an example, like two different examples. I just talked about one of them. Shiloh Hendricks was one example of this. Because she was blatantly racist, what they want to do is they want to make it seem like her racism can actually get rewarded. They want to reward her for the fact that she has, done something that is blatantly racist. Another example of this, it actually recently happened in the WWE. If you look at the WWE, there was a wrestler on there. Any of you all who watch it, and her name is Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany Stratton had made a racist comment about what's her face, Jade Cargill, the wrestler. And the race, she didn't make it, but basically what it was is she reposted a video where there was a voiceover done, and it was like her hitting Jade Cargill off of the ring post, and she was saying "black bitch," but it was in the voice of, I believe it was Brandy Rhodes, but regardless, it was a Black woman. And the Black woman was saying "black bitch." Okay. And so when it comes to what's her face, Tiffany Stratton, she reposted the video and she was laughing like it was funny. And so what they did was that she took the video down. There was a big uproar about it. And then what they tried to do is let she could come back in and into the WWE. And then they tried to legitimize her by allowing her to win the WWE championship. That was a way of taking what was really a racist action and then trying to say, well, she can just go ahead and get away with it. They were trying to legitimize something that was racist. So yeah, that was basically what that was about. Now, that's another example of it, because she obviously, if that was somebody else who had did something, like imagine if it was the other way around and Jay Cargill had said white bitch and had hit Tiffany Stratton, there would be a big uproar about that. But what they did was they said, well, she's such a rising star. She's the best star ever. And Tiffany Stratton is average as hell in every way. She's an average wrestler. She's average on the mic or worse. She's average looking. I mean, she has big titties, but she has no ass. And like, she's just not anything special. People are like, oh, she looks like a damn Barbie, but really, who gives a shit? She's average in every way, and she's racist. So it's like that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to legitimize, her racism. So that's kind of what that was about. So let's look at the comments here. So let's go back up here. So true. It's trying to cause confusion. Absolutely. It seems like they're winning the culture war. It's not good for Black progression. I wouldn't say that, bro. I would say that they are desperate. And as a result of desperation, they feel the need to do something that's going to put them back in a position where they don't have to hide. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a win per se, but what I am saying is that I think because they're desperate, they're seeing that a lot of us are actually waking up. So I wouldn't take it that way. I do think that we should be prepared for this thing to happen more. But I think that at the end of the day, it's not necessarily anything that is a win per se. The problem is we involve them too much in our focus. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but as far as like involving them into our mix and things like that, the part that I will say is that we need to make sure that we understand what they are doing. This is one thing to say, like, just don't let them in. It's another thing to understand what's actually happening and what's going on. And that's why conversations like this are very important, because we can break all of these things down. And then facts, and it's working. Like I said, you need to understand that it's a sign of desperation. It's not necessarily that we're in peril, we're in trouble. I think they know we're getting more on code, and as a result of us getting more on code, they're trying to take desperate measures. So that's our point at this point, to take a step back and say, oh well, we see what's happening and we know how to move as a result. Let's see here. I've noticed that with other people, it's just a different culture attitude, but they dogpile on us because it's the safe option. The thing is that I think that there's a lot of like um there's a lot of cowardice, and as a result of there being cowardice, I think that we are in a situation where people don't want to embrace like the truth. They don't want to kind of go back and look at where things started, how we got here, how we got to that point, and that takes away their ability to, one, speak truth to power, and two, fight back. So I think that's why we need people to kind of break these things down, and then to also go and make power moves. I think if you give people options, they can, the right people, the people who are justice oriented, will take action the way that they need to. And then the other people are going to reveal themselves. That's why it's important for us to label people based off of what they do and then what they say. Let's see. I'm a white conservative. Who are you talking about? LOL. Y'all got to get off the internet. So, correction, you're not a white conservative. You are a suspected white supremacist. And I am confident that you are typing this to me in your local trailer park while eating mayonnaise out of a jar with a spoon. So, we are going to get your ass up out the paint. Do not come back, because nobody gives a damn. Anyway, so next person here. So with that being said, going back to my point, when it comes to the dominant society, one thing that we need to understand is that um, you know, with the white supremacists, a lot of them are using this whole term because they're trying to deflect not just from the racism and the things that they're saying. What they're trying to do is normalize this idea of them. They're taking the attention off of the obsession with us, but essentially they want to make it where, because we're so focused on the things that we're saying to them, they're normalizing intellectual property theft. So in other words, because they're obsessed with us, they're looking at all the things that we're doing, all the things we're saying, all of our like lingo, all the things that we invent, as I said before, and they're trying to find ways to steal these things while also trying to fight back against us if we try to say, hey, you stole it, or hey, you did this, or hey, you did that. So that's ultimately kind of what it ends up like boiling down to. They want to find a way to take our intellectual property, whether that's verbally or whether that's something that we physically did, and they're trying to make a way to make it into our own thing. These fools are not creative enough to come up with their own stuff. So as a result of not being, creative enough to come with, up with their own stuff, they steal ours and they remix it into other things. There is somewhat of a revisionist history agenda that goes on even in the present, although it's not really history, it's the present. So you'll see a lot of times where they'll take things that we say commonly in the present, they remix it into other things. So this whole black fatigue thing that you all are hearing about is part of that. So that's why we need to understand where things came from. And that's why it was important when I did this live for me to explain kind of who was the one who actually came up with this. Because what a lot of people won't tell you is that, oh, it was a foundational Black American woman named Mary, who is, you know, who was the writer of a book called Black Fatigue. And she was detailing us being tired of trying to, you know, experience or tired of trying to fight back against racism and experiencing it. Yet it's now being turned into a thing of white people deflecting because they don't want to have accountability for them being racist. So that's what it's all about, y'all. And that's what they ultimately are trying to do. So I probably have been on here on this live for about an hour now. I'm gonna have to get going soon, but couple things I wanted to kind of bring up before we kind of close out and, you know, we're done with this topic is I'm going to have some more polls and some more things so that y'all can kind of vote on what y'all would like to hear me talk about next. I will have some more videos. I know there's a few videos I said I was going to put out. I'll be real, I haven't had time to put them out, and some of them it's like the time kind of passed. So I'm going to put out some new videos and some relevant things. There are some topics that people asked me to talk about that I will get into soon. Like one of the things that people asked me to talk about was this whole Eve's Bayou movie. Like I think it was woman Jacqueline, I think was on here. She asked me to talk about that. There was somebody on here. I don't think it was you, Inspired Truth Broadcast, if you're still here. But somebody asked me about my opinion on Anton Daniels, and they wanted me to, I don't know if they wanted me to do a video on it or they wanted me to just talk about it. But my point was, like they wanted me to they asked what my opinion was on him. So I might do a video on that as well too. I have a couple other topics that I want to discuss and I want to talk about that I'll put on the channel when I get an opportunity. I'm going to try to aim for tomorrow, but if not, it'll be sometime this week. Where I will have that. I also will, you know, make sure I make time to do another live video come Thursday as well too, where we'll talk and discuss another topic that is pertinent to the channel as well. Like I said, over time, I'm going to have more content that I'm going to put out there, and we're going to get back to a regular flow. There's just a lot of moving parts. I did also want to let y'all know, for those of y'all who are listening to me here, and eventually y'all want to hear me on other platforms. So tomorrow on Instagram, I'm going to be going live to talk about some other things. I'll talk about things related to what I talked about today, but I'll also be going into other things as well too that have been kind of happening my way and in my world, probably more in depth on the whole YouTube creator community thing. But, you know, there'd be some things that I'm probably going to talk about as well too outside of that. So I definitely would like it for y'all to join me there if you are able to, and that would be great. In the meantime, one of the things I'm going to ask y'all to do, if you have not done that, is if y'all are on TikTok, please shoot me a follow on TikTok. That would be helpful. I'm trying to build up that, just like I'm building up Instagram and YouTube as well too. It would be great if I could have your support. If you could also, you know, come through and, you know, show love on this platform as well too. And, you know, as I'm building it up, I'm going to be putting content on there. You'll see me kind of bring up certain topics that I may have talked about in different videos. These long form videos, they have a lot of content in them, but with people and our attention spans being shorter than damn Kevin Hart, a lot of us like are just, you know, not trying to watch the whole damn video. Some of y'all are like loyal supporters and stuff like that, but a lot of people aren't trying to watch long form videos. So I want to break these things apart. Let's see here. Jacqueline. Oh, there goes Jacqueline. She came on. Hey, it was me that asked about Eve's Bayou. Okay, so I was right about that. I remember you asking about that, and I have not forgotten. I'm watching the show tonight. You're watching the show as in like you're watching the show as in you're watching the movie Eve's Bayou, or you're watching the show as in you're watching my live video or going back and watching a live video. Just so I want to clarify what you mean by that. But going back, yeah, I'm still going to do the whole Eve's Bayou thing. I just got to have some time to rewatch it one more time all the way through. I got, and take more notes. Your show. Got it. Okay, got it. We on the same page. Cool. Yeah. As far as East Bayou, I just gotta rewatch it one more time. Probably gonna take some notes, mental notes more than anything. And then I'm going to review it, like as far as who I believe is the real villain and what the overall message is. I did watch part of it one day when I was had like a break, at work. I like watched a little bit of it, but I wasn't able to really focus because I had some other things I was trying to do as well too. But I'll go back and I'll rewatch it. But the one thing that I want to do, y'all, while I'm here, because I said I was gonna try to do it, I want to figure out what that term was that I was telling you all about. Let me see if I can find it real quick, because I didn't forget that, and I want to make sure that I get that term out. Hold on one second. I don't think it was Brandolini's law. I don't think it was that. Hold on. Let's see here. Okay, so actually, y'all, I was right. It actually is Brandolini's law. So I'm tripping. Brandolini's law was actually the fallacy that I was talking about. I just needed to just be certain about what I was thinking. Brandolini's law is the term that, if somebody basically spews a lot of BS, that it takes more energy to refute it than it does to keep saying the same lie over and over and over again. Brandolini's law, y'all. That's what it was called. I think like the first term I was thinking of was something totally different. Brandolini's law was what is the term of what the white supremacist is trying to do when they try to say the same lie or remixed lie in this case over and over again in order for people who are like me, who are trying to tell the truth, in order to stop us from debunking the lie. Let's see here. If they could not grift off of us, they probably wouldn't speak on us as much. They would still talk, but not to the extent that they do now. Yeah, the thing is that that's why gatekeeping is important, bro. Because when it comes to gatekeeping, we definitely need to be, very shrewd about who we would even let into our community in the first place. And you can look at history and you can look at a lot of different things and show or see that a lot of these white people who we let into our community, they end up, either trying to destroy things from the inside or take it and remix it or use it as a hobby. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about with, I'm very critical of Jane Elliott and people like that. A lot of them, them and the Tim Wises and all them, a lot of them, which I call the white street prophet trope. A lot of these folks, they like to come into our mix and say things that Black people like to hear. And ultimately, they end up revealing themselves to be disrespectful and not really for anything that's tangible for Black society. Like they talk a good game, and a lot of these silly Negroids, they eat that shit up, right? But then, like a lot of the stuff that they're actually saying, is just all talk but no show. When you think about Jane Elliott, the reason why I'm very critical about her is because, she likes to talk a good game about white people being racist and Black people are thinking that she's, the next John Brown and all this other nonsense. And, when she got on the Socks and Sandals podcast, was over there talking about how she didn't really agree with like the whole reparations thing. She was talking about how like if reparations were to happen, the natives would need to get it first. And she also was talking about how we don't really need to have reparations. We need to just start all over with a clean slate. So you can kind of see, the what happens when these white street prophets kind of get into the community and they start saying things that are detrimental to the community, and they're trying to position themselves as experts on things that are happening with us. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent to your point, but I brought that up to basically say that they try to, as you said, grift off of us in a lot of different ways. So even when it comes to like, you could look at entertainment, obviously, you could look at music, You know what I mean? You could look at like our lingo, you could look at our inventions, you could look at all these things that we've had. They do grift off of those things, right? But they even grift off of us literally politically as well too. We're talking about things related to what the issues that we experience in our community and things like that. They try to grift off of that as well. So you see, you know, this and that like live and in action. So that's what I see quite a bit. Jane was a clown for that. She was a clown. She was a clown. And that's the thing too, because you know, a lot of people didn't see that Socks and Sandals podcast, so they don't know. And I think she said it in another place as well too, if I'm not mistaken. There's another place where she said that we didn't need reparations, we just needed a clean slate. And she needs to you know, shut her old crusty ass mouth, because nobody is trying to hear all of that. And you know, that's why I tell people, you all got to stop acting like these people are heroes. You know, a lot of times, like in our, you know, in our community, we try to you know, we crave white acceptance, so we'll lift up white people who we think are saying the things that are you know, positive or helpful to our community. Because there's a lot of people who like Jane Elliott because, again, she talks a good game when it comes to calling out a lot of, you know, racists in, you know, in her community. But when it comes to us, like where we made the mistake is allowing her to be the dictator of what is happening with us. So it's all part of like what I would call like the yo homie yo trope, where you get these white people who are trying to make themselves seem like acceptable individuals within, you know, our society, and they try to either emulate us as seemingly as a way of admiration, but really is mimicry, or they'll try to get in our mix, and they do these types of things because they, you know, they really are appealing to Black people who crave white acceptance. And that's how we get into this whole white people are invited to the cookout nonsense, because a lot of these silly ass Negroids will actually like invite them into the community. Unfortunately, many of us allow and accept it because of the need for validation from these folks. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of us have, like, we crave white acceptance. So because we crave white acceptance, we allow these people to do what they're actually doing. So they come into the community and they use things such as at low level, because we're talking about low and high level here. Low level, they'll use cheap mimicry. And then that's when you get like people like the Eminems and the Michael Rappaports and people like that, you know, who kind of like I said, they kind of have that yo homie yo thing kind of going on. And then you get like on a higher level, like some of the Jane Elliott's and the Tim Wises and people like that, who talk about, you know, Black oppression, but they do it because it's a hobby, and because we crave white acceptance and this idea that there is a good white person out there who loves us, or at least gives the illusion of loving us, we accept them into the community. So I definitely agree with you on that. Exactly. We really need to get rid of the need for white acceptance and validation. Yeah, those folks are the worst. What I think we need to do is we need to just point out the individuals who are doing it. I have a motto when it comes to the Cool Colas brand, and I'll share it with y'all because it's something that's very important to me, and I think it's something that we should really think and live by. I'm not here to change minds and hearts. I'm here to inspire and work with the like-minded. That is my motto. And the reason why that's my motto is because a lot of us have this idea of trying to get into Sambo transformation. We don't need to transform a Sambo and try to get rid of his butter biscuits. We need to make sure we're calling out who the Sambos are and identifying them and saying, hey, that Negro right there, avoid that Negro. Like, that's somebody who we can't have a part of us while we're building. They can't be a part of our community. They can't be here with us trying to build something constructive, because all they're going to do is tear it down, because look at them already tap dancing, ain't shit happened yet. So we need to be, you know, very on point about identifying these types of individuals, not trying to necessarily change them, because some of them will try to work amongst you and stuff like that. It's like, nah, we know who this Negro is. That's who they are. Now, we'll do that obviously with people who are blatant. Like, we've done it with Clarence Thomas. We've done it with Jesse Lee Peterson. We've done it with people like that, but we need to do it with even more. I get what's the word I'm looking for. We need to do it with even more difficult examples to identify. Jamie Foxx is one of them. He basically said one good white person can do more than many of us together. I didn't even know he said that. And what else did he say? I saw an interview with him saying that, in so many words, he totally minimized our human and civil rights efforts and effectiveness. I will say it doesn't really surprise me. A lot of these celebrities are big examples of this, because the reason why they're celebrities is because there are certain things that they have to say and do and play up in order for them to get the fame and success and things like that that they get. You know, they have to kind of they have to appease the dominant society to a certain extent. They have to say things that are going to keep them in good with them. So they know who to pick, and they know how to get people who are willing to basically portray these messages. And so this is why discernment is important. This is something that I talk about in my brand, y'all. This is very, very important. One of the things that we need to understand is that we have to discern the difference between somebody who is talented and their actual mentality. These are two different things. But there are people who intertwine the two things. They have difficulties deciphering, oh, although I like them and what they do and how talented they are, I also want to listen to the things that they say and emulate those things. So they try to make themselves like the motivational speaker while also making themselves the talented individual who you should support. But ultimately, you have to separate these two different things. There's stuff that a lot of these celebrities do that is it's very like they're very talented. Like, you want to support them, you want to see them do well, but then you hear the things that they say and you're like, yeah, that was some Sambo shit. Like like you was kind of cooning for butter biscuits there. So that's kind of a regular thing in my opinion to kind of see. You know, a lot of them kind of do that type of behavior. And those types of people, we just need to identify like kind of what's happening there, because a lot of celebrities do just get placed into that space where first of all, the white supremacists, they know who they are, and that's why they're celebrities in the first place. And then also on top of that too, they are doing all that because they want to keep that notoriety. And what they'll do, even in some cases, is they'll take somebody who you know, is a big music star, movie star, whatever the case may be, have them have all this fame, all this money, or whatever the case may be, and then they'll, you know, have all this stuff, you know, on them, and they'll try to take them down if they do anything that's degenerate. And they have like a way of trying to orchestrate that type of thing so that they can take that person down if they ever decide, hey, I'm going to be power to the people one day. So they'll try to take them down, you know, by like looking up the rap sheet of the things that they've done while they had all this success and while they had all this fame. So that's something that they like to do as well. And they like to prop that person up to say, well, this is somebody who is one of the degenerates of your community, when ultimately they just get the biggest Sambo that they can find, who is desperate to, you know, be at the top. And then they think that they're one of the white supremacists themselves, and then they behave and emulate their type of behavior, right? And then if they actually decide that they want to kind of flip the script on them and make power moves, and they're like, okay, no, we got you, Negro, we got you. And then what they do is they make sure that they go down. You know, they kind of get all these things on them. And they say we're going to take them down. And here's the thing too, it kind of mixes things in, because sometimes these people will do bad things, but then like they won't do the thing they're being accused of. So they like to do that type of thing as well too. See, that is very true. I can like what you do, but that doesn't mean we can trust them. Exactly. A lot of these celebrities, you know, are on that type of thing. There's only a few celebrities I can think of that really like have an on code mentality right now. But again, like, you know, a lot of the ones that do have that type of mentality, they're either not really saying it, they're not alive, or there's somebody who is not popular, somebody who is not seen as somebody who has a lot of recognition at this moment. There's a few of them out there, and don't get me wrong, there's some celebrities who are making some great like moves where I can kind of respect what they're doing, but it's more likely that you're going to see a celebrity who is cooning, like, to be honest with you. So to Jacqueline's point, I agree, and I could understand why she or I not understand, I can definitely see what she's saying. You know, I know she's talking about Jamie Foxx. I didn't hear him say it myself. I'm not saying he didn't, but I'm saying I could believe it, because I see that a lot of celebrities, they tend to do this thing where they say different things because they're trying to keep their livelihood within the, I guess, like whatever profession that they're doing. So I definitely see that, and they're definitely seldom going to call out the BS. If anything, they're going to stomp down on the community because that's a popular thing to do. So that's what I see quite a bit. But all right, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get up out of here. I got some stuff I gotta take care of. It's getting a little bit late around here, and yeah, I definitely will be on soon to kind of chop it back up with y'all. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope y'all did as well too. Hope y'all found it informative, and I definitely will have more to come. So again, make sure you stay tuned. Other than that, I will talk to y'all later, and we will be talking soon about more important topics. Peace out, y'all.